those up. So who's joining you tonight? It's myself. I've already introduced myself, Corinne Peterson. I'm the Director of Student Financial Services. I actually oversee as part of Student Financial Services, outreach, communications, and also tuition planning. And with me today is Bill Rosario. He's the Assistant Director of Tuition Planning and the Veteran School Certifying Official. And I'll readily admit also my right hand. So we actually at UNE, we work hard to personalize every one of your experiences. This is a very unique journey and it's specific to every family. So we know that it's probably a very interesting conversation happening in all of your homes now. Everyone's excited. Your student was accepted to college. You've made some decisions, but I'm sure there's a bit of apprehension too about what needs to get done, making sure you're meeting all of those deadlines and, you know, setting up your student for success. So, and we understand one of those big pieces is paying for college. And one of the major considerations for families where a student ends up going is the cost of college. So we're going to be here to guide you, and we're going to show you how you can look at a balanced approach to funding your students' education. I'm really hoping that this is valuable to you and you'll join us for some other webinars. So we divided the presentation kind of into a bit things students need to do and then things that families need to do. And as I know many of you are parents, but I like to try to use inclusive language, that there may be others that are supporting, you know, students. So I like to always use the term families. So what we're going to do as part of this is we do have a bit of a checklist, and we're going to walk through that too. So just know we're always going to be here for you. And remember, this is recorded, so I don't want anybody to have to rush and try to furiously take notes, because I'm a note taker myself. So we can always get this information back out to you at any time. So right now, we know what's going on in the months of May and June. For some of you, thinking about financing maybe right at the top of your list, or some of you might be thinking about other pieces of putting together your child's education. But we just want to make sure that you have all the information that you need so you can make an informed decision. So we're going to go over a summer timeline as it's related to student financial services. So first, what's going to happen is the fall bill is going to be released. So right now they're aiming for mid-July with that date. We will have a more solid date coming out soon. So anything that you see within our presentation tonight that's giving you a mid-range or not an exact date, other information will be forthcoming. So you won't be surprised by anything that's coming. But we want to make sure we give you a very general idea of what would be when things would be happening. Okay. Oh, and I apologize. I just want to back up a little bit. When it comes to questions, we would love to hear your questions at the end of the webinar. We're going to be going over all the questions that were asked. So if you want to go into the chat and actually send a direct message to Bill Rosario, he's going to be gathering all of those questions, and then we're going to read them out loud, because I'm sure everybody has some of the same questions, and we want to make sure everyone hears the information. So just a little side note on that. So when the fall bill is released, all students are actually also charged health insurance. We all know that many families will continue to cover their student on their family plan. So we're also going to talk about how you can get that charge removed from the bill, or you can waive the health insurance. The health insurance site opens up July 1, and at that point, your student will be able to go in and complete the waiver. There's a website that you see right there on your screen. That information is also online too. So we don't want you to have to write down the website, but just know that, you can go onto our site and actually look it up, and you can find it. Just this as a reminder, the site is not open yet. It will be as of July 1. So there'll be a communication that comes out with that. The thing we do really want to share with you is that the period to waive is just about a month. So it's July 1st to July 31st. So we strongly encourage students to, when that opens up, if you know you have health insurance, to go in and make sure that you waive it. I always find, and it seems to be that when you sometimes wait to the last minute, it happens to me too, that's when there's issues with what I'm trying to do pops up. So if you do it early enough in the process, we can assist you if you run into any issues. So once the waiver is submitted, that charge will come off with between 3 to 5 days. So then in mid-July, we'll send out an updated bill. And there's a reason that you're going to get an initial bill and an updated bill. Those students who are deciding to live on campus during this time between June, July, and mid-July, you'll be making a final decision on your housing. So depending on what type of housing you choose, that's going to determine what your cost is going to be. When we're having conversations about cost and we're using we use the standard rate that you see. That's based on a triple in our Featherman residence hall. And I always say to students, it's in families, it's really going to come down to what your choice is, what that cost is going to be. So of course, if a student needs to live in a single, that's going to be a higher cost than, you know, a triple or a double or those types of arrangements. So that's why you'll see an updated bill, but the tuition and those other pieces are already set. The bill is going to include the housing charge, as I shared. It'll have the updated housing charge, and then it will also show the loans, scholarships, or any aid that your student is receiving that is complete. And when I say that, when we award students, especially when it comes to loans or when families apply for loans, there's some steps you have to take with filling out documents like the promissory note and other documents. So those, once that's completed, that aid will show on the bill. So if there's something still outstanding, it will show very quickly because that won't show on a student's bill, and it'll give them the opportunity to kind of revise that. So fall bills are due August 1st. And that just means that at that time, if you set up a payment plan, your payment plan or your loan or whatever way you're finding to cover your tuition just needs to be set. It needs to be all set and in place. You know, if you borrow a loan, they typically won't send us the loan money until after ad drop. And that's a protection for students and families, that a loan isn't dispersed and it's not accruing interest, and then a student decides they're not going to attend. So that's usually done after that. But as long as we know it's coming, everything is typically fine. And then when we move to the end of, I did talk about the health, July 29th, the last day for the health insurance waivers, as I shared. And then at the end of August, we're going to have move-in day. And again, there'll be information that comes out separately from residential life, but then we'll see you on the first day of classes, which is August 31st. So that's a really exciting day. We'll be excited to see students and family. I love that. I'll be honest with you, I'm a person who loves that day. So speaking of the bill, we send out e-bill notifications, and they will start, as I shared, in mid-June. And the reason we send them out so early is to give you the entire summer, give you that opportunity during the summer to finalize any plans. If you're noticing on your screen, I'm sure we have a semester startup guide. It says that it will arrive with the bill. As we're sending out e-billing statements, this is actually a bit of a live document. So you'll get a link to this document. If you notice, there's links within the document on when you need to take steps and where you need to go to do that. So those links are live. So it sends you to where you need to be to complete some of those steps. So you'll be able to use this as a very comprehensive guide to get you through the process of making sure that you're ready for the semester. And it actually has information that is also not necessarily related to financial aid. So of course, there's information on payment arrangements, but there's also information. This is showing as one page, but it's 2 pages. There's information on how to go get your parking pass and when you need to do that and when you need to sign up. So we try to make sure that we're hitting on all of those pieces to make sure that when a student, again, when they come to campus, so important. It's a new beginning process. We don't want it to be scary. We want students to know exactly what it is that they need to do. We want to give you a bit of direction. When you do receive your bill, just a reminder, the bill that you receive will be just for the fall semester. We bill 1 semester at a time. So you'll get the bill for the fall semester, in mid-June, and then the spring semester bill typically goes out in December. We do recommend for families that are going to borrow loans that you borrow for the entire academic year. And the reason why we recommend that is if you go to borrow a loan a second time, every time you're filling out an application, they're checking your credit. And I'm sure many of you are like me, you're very protective over your credit. You've worked hard to make sure that you've paid your bills and that you've taken care of that. So we want to make sure that you're not taking those hits over and over. So we always say, borrow for the academic year. If something happens for some reason and you change your mind about the loan for this semester, your student decides to transfer, which we don't want them to transfer, we want them to stay, but if they decide to transfer, we won't receive that funding. We only receive the funding for those 1 semester at a time. We bill 1 semester at a time and we receive the funding. So borrow the loan for the academic year, student starts the fall semester, we only get the fall semester portion. So just to make you aware of that. As a reminder, I know some of you may have seen that you were selected for the verification process, and there's paperwork that you need to get to our office. The verification process is a requirement from the Department of Education. So it's not a decision that the school makes, that the university decides who needs to be selected. It's when you fill out the FAFSA, when the information is sent back to us, the Department of Ed notifies us that they've selected someone. And really what they're doing is they're asking a family to verify the information that they put on the FAFSA form. So if any of you still have outstanding documents, we would encourage you to try to get those in as quickly as possible, even though we do still have a little bit of time. As we all know, the summer can come and go very quickly. So we want to make sure that we can help you get that funding in place. So as you see, some of the documents that you need for verification, it's a lot of tax information. So they're verifying a lot of income. We do say, just make sure there are verification forms floating around. So you only need to fill out forms if we've notified you that you've been selected. We'll also send you out information. It'll be in UOnline. You'll get missing item notifications. As we said, we want to make sure you complete the process as quickly as possible. Because even though you may be awarded, all of those awards are considered estimated. So there's a point, if the verification doesn't get completed, we can't disperse that money to you. So we just want to make sure that, again, you're going to hear that theme over and over tonight from me. We want to make sure that you're set. We want to make sure that we're setting you up for success. So students, if you haven't already done so, and I know many of you have, because we get the emails about you being in your UOnline account needing assistance, which is great. We want you to reach out to us. But for those of you who may not have done so, you should be looking to set up your UOnline account. You will do a lot of things in your UOnline. You'll register for classes. It's the university's online portal, so you do a lot of things in there. You can accept your financial aid, as I shared, register for classes. There's instructions in there on how to do things like accept your loans. So we really, really want to make sure that students are utilizing that kind of one stop because there's a lot of good information in there for them. So I just have a note quickly here on how a student can accept their awards. So you're going to do it within your UOnline portal account. You go to Student Financial Services, and then you go to award, and then you're going to choose the award year, and then you accept terms and conditions. You have to do that first because we want to make sure that you understand the requirements of accepting this aid. And then you can accept or decline your loans, and you can accept or decline federal work study if you are awarded work study. We don't give you the option to decline any gift aid because the assumption is that you'll be accepting your gift aid. So it's only your loans and your federal work study. So as we all know, families work together to fund students. And I will use the term parents. And a lot of times parents are really integral with students when it comes to making those decisions on funding. But students do play a role too. They play a very important role. Students should be utilizing their time now and during the summer to apply for scholarships. And I always like to say that's the student's job right now. Their job is to be applying for scholarships. And I know if you kind of have conversations, if you hear information on the internet, it seems like there's a lot of noise when it comes to scholarship. There's a lot of noise when it comes to financial aid too. Sometimes students and families don't feel like it's necessarily worth it, that there's a lot of work for a small payoff. But what I would say is the volume of scholarships and outside awards that we see in our office is a testament to the funding that's out there and available. So there is very much funding out there for students. A lot of times it's the smaller scholarships, I know, and that's one thing to keep in mind. Many students want to go after the very large scholarships, but there are sometimes $500 scholarships, $250 scholarships, and getting a number of those can certainly make an impact on what your overall cost would be. I did have the link to our website above. You can, again, go on our site and Google that. You don't have to remember the link. There's some helpful information, and there's also a scholarship database. The only thing I always caution students, if you just go on Google and put in scholarships, you'll get a lot of that noise. You should never give anybody any money or pay anybody to receive a scholarship. So I just want to make sure that you know that. This is a personal recommendation of mine, and it's one thing that I've learned over my years, and I won't share how many years that has been in financial aid, but my many years in financial aid is that social connections can bring a lot of scholarships. And when I say that, I always look at, is somebody in the family, and I'm saying your larger family, does someone belong to a fraternity or a sorority? I myself am a very proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated. So I know we do scholarship work. Does somebody work for a company that maybe gives out scholarships? Does someone work for Verizon, and Verizon has scholarships? Is someone a Mason or an Elk? Or, even like Fred Flintstone, if you're part of the Loyal Order of Water Buffaloes. A lot of those groups are also doing kind of that benevolent work out there, and they're working with students with scholarships. So if you belong to any of those, I always say, think about, do you go to a certain church? Is there a community organization that you're involved with? You can always look to them and see if they're doing any type of scholarship work with students. So a little bit more information on scholarships, because to me, they're so vitally important. One thing about UNE that is very unique from other institutions is we do not lower any of your UNE gift aid if you receive a scholarship. I preface that with as long as you're within your cost of attendance. So there's only so much aid you can receive. I always, any of you who have been on one of these webinars before, you'll hear me, I always like to talk about the pie. Think about it as you have to, instead of taking slices out, you have to fill slices in. So your gift aid is going to be a slice, your loans are going to be a slice. Once that pie is full, you can't put any more slices in there. So think about those pieces of aid that way. So that's how I always say, think about your cost of attendance. It makes up all these pieces that comes to this number. So as long as you remain in that, if you receive any scholarship or gift, scholarship aid or any type of outside funding, we allow you to keep, excuse me, excuse me, I apologize. Excuse me, we allow you to keep that, which is very different from other universities. Other universities will usually take back a portion of the aid that they gave to you. We do ask that you send us copies of the letter or scholarship so that we can get it on your account. We can memo it so that we know that it's coming. And then we'll credit those funds to you. When it comes to scholarships, they're going to provide the funding in one of two ways. They're either going to ask you for the information for UNE so that they can send the money to us directly, or they might send the money to the student. If the money is sent to the student, you have the choice of sending the money to us or using it for, other educational costs, but we still do need to know about it because the Department of Education requires us to know of all aid that student is receiving. So again, the student doesn't go over that cost of attendance that I was talking about. I apologize. 1 second. I just need to take a sip of water. So if the student has decided to accept federal loans, they will have to complete the master promissory note and the entrance counseling. Many of you have probably started getting emails, sending you to that requirement. And just so you know, when you do complete that requirement, you're doing that on the Department of Education website. So then they're feeding that information back to us. So it's not a real-time feed. So you may see your requirements still showing that they're incomplete for up to a week or so after you do it. It's us waiting for the information back. So we just want to make sure that you know that, because I have had conversations with students who have said, I know I already did this, and we're just waiting for the information back. So that if you haven't completed that, you're going to go onto the studentaid.gov and use the FSA ID. That's the same ID that you used when you completed the FAFSA. And you'll choose the in-school tab and then complete entrance counseling. Entrance counseling is a very important part of the process because it does really explain the terms of borrowing, repayment options, and what that's going to look like. We think about that as being down the road, but everyone's starting to realize it's something important that students need to realize right at the beginning of the process, because I think it helps you make a decision on how you decide to borrow. And then the next step will be to complete the master promissory note. Both of those need to be completed only once while you're enrolled at the university. So it's kind of the master promissory note and the entrance are perpetual. Once you complete those, that will make sure that we can get those loans credited to your bill that you're going to receive in June. We want to make sure you do that before June because we want to be able to reflect those loans so that your bill is as accurate as possible. One big piece and one reminder we want to make sure that we bring up as part of this process is once students arrive on campus and they're enrolled in classes, we're no longer able to discuss students' financial aid or any of their information with any third party. And yes, families are considered a third party without the student's consent and authorization. So students have an opportunity to fill out, I know everybody loves to use the acronym FERPA, but it actually stands for Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And it really says that a student has a right to privacy with their educational record, and they can choose who has access to it and who doesn't have access to it. So if I know that many families out there are supporting students and helping them work through the educational process and the financing process. So we recommend that students go on U Online in their requirements tab and fill that out. So if you know it's going to be mom and dad, make sure you put on mom and dad. If you know it's going to be a grandparent, if you know it's going to be aunt, uncle, cousin, brother, whoever it is, and I use grandparent because I have a granddaughter, just make sure that you have that form completed. There is nothing worse than to have a family on the phone, a parent or a grandparent or whoever that third party is, who's really trying to help a student, and you know the student, you really need to convey some information that's timely and important, but you're kind of tethered because the FERPA hasn't been completed. That's the worst feeling in the world, and we don't want that. And then we also don't want you to feel slighted that we can't have those conversations with you, because we want to make sure we're helping your student. So definitely make sure those forms are completed. When you fill out the form, they do ask for the name and then the last four of the person's social security number. And that's only because we'll ask for that information back, because we want to make sure that whoever's calling on that phone is really that person. So we don't, it's very easy sometimes to not know who's on the other end of the line. So this is us, again, trying to make sure that we're protecting the student's information. For anybody that received, was awarded federal work study or is borrowing and is anticipating they're going to get a refund, we strongly recommend that you set up direct deposit. So direct deposit will ensure that you get the any funds that are entitled to you faster. The other option would be a check will go out to you, and that goes to your permanent address. So your permanent address could be home, but you're on campus. So we always say, if you have an account, just sign up for direct deposit. It'll make your life so much easier. Another piece of information I want to share that's not necessarily on this slide, but it's always something I make sure I share with students and families when I'm talking to them. I would check your email address that you have on file with us right now. A number of students put their high school email address, and then once they leave high school, it's no longer working. So once you're on campus, we're going to communicate directly with your UNE email address that you'll receive. But in the meantime, just to make sure, if you by chance you might have put that, you might want to reach out to admissions to try to get that changed, because if you have a Gmail, so we can make sure we're getting information out to you. Just another slide that we're showing that talks about giving information to families and third parties. So if you have a third party that you would like to provide your financial information, you can also set up a third party authorization. So you can actually do that through the site we use, which is called TouchNet. You would log into your U Online again, but then you would navigate to the TouchNet portal and you would select Manage My Bill. And right now, I know students don't have a bill out there right now. But once you do have a bill, you'll be able to access this part. You'll be able to enter their email address, and then the authorized user will get instructions on how to set that account up. That's also the place where you're going to set up your payment plans if you're planning to utilize them. And just if this hasn't been shared with you yet, I was going to say reminder, but I know some of this information is new to some of our families. There is a $25 enrollment fee to set up the payment plan, but there's no interest on those payments. All right. So again, a little bit on the authorized user access in TouchNet. What will happen is once you've set a person up, they'll receive emails on when the bill is available. They'll be able to view the bill, make the online payments, set up payment plans. They'll receive emails if bill becomes past due. And I know very important to many families, you can view and get access to the 1098T form. So we strongly encourage students, if they know they're working with their families in that manner, to make sure that they get that set up and complete. So we're going to go through an example of how to figure out your net cost for the year. So, and then we're going to run through an example of how the tuition payment plan works, and how it would work if you also borrowed loans. So the example we're going to show you is kind of doing a little bit of both. And then that's something we always want to make sure that we share with families. When we're talking about either making payments or taking loans, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be a portion of one and a portion of another. And that's what I'm going to show you here in our example right here. So we have our fall 22 tuition. It's split up, the direct cost is split over each semester. So that's $28,090 that you're seeing right there. So as I shared, half the balance is going to be billed in fall, half will be in spring. And then any aid that a student receives, you'll deduct out. So if you see here, this example of this student received an $18,000 scholarship. So they'll get half of that in fall and half of that in spring. And then also the direct student loans if you just family decides to accept them. So when you subtract all of that aid, we're looking at the balance below here, which is in this example is $16,369. So that's your the net cost per this student's net cost per semester. So now we're looking at an example to the right that shows how it would look with the payment plan. So here's our net cost per semester. And then in this situation, this student decided to borrow a private loan, $20,000 in a private loan. So that will be $10,000 one semester and then $10,000 for the next semester. And then the leftover amount is the amount that student's going to utilize in a payment plan. So we're actually giving you two scenarios here. So the amount that's due either in 6 payments or 5 payments. When you set up the payment plan, that's going to determine how many payments you're going to have. So if you set it up at the beginning of the semester and you have the 6 payments because they're monthly payments, you can do that. But if you wait as you get farther into the semester, if a month or those timeframes have gone by, at that point, you'll have whatever payments are left over. So it could be 4 or 3 or 2 at that point. Again, here's the link to the website to our information about our payment plans. So we did go over in some of our previous webinars, we did discuss loans in depth, but we're going to talk about loans just very quickly because all of the information that we're talking about, it all ties together. So, and for any of our families that are new to our webinar series, when we're talking about loans to cover a balance, we're talking about either the Parent Plus loan or the private loan. And there's differences with each loan. The Parent Plus loan is a loan through the Department of Education. It's a federal loan. And then a private loan would be a loan that you borrowed through any lender that you chose. We do have a preferred lender list, but you can work with anybody that you choose to. That gives you a rate you're comfortable with. So if you can see that there's a difference in the rate based on which loan you borrowed. The Parent Plus loan is a fixed rate loan, but they do review that every single year. So once the loan is dispersed, that will be the interest rate. Then if you take a loan the next year, when they reset the interest rate, that would be the interest rate for that loan. For the private loan, it could be fixed or variable. It's going to be completely dependent on the lender and the credit score. So that's a credit-based loan. As you can see, credit scores are not used for the Parent Plus loan, but they do look at adverse credit. And then with the private loan, yes, that decision in rate is based on the FICO. They do look at income to debt ratio with the private loan, and they don't do that with the Parent Plus loan. And then typically with the private loans, they don't charge you a fee to borrow, but they do that with the Plus loan. So it's whatever amount you need, you borrow that amount above that, because they take that right off the top before they send us the money. There's a couple of other factors, that are in these loan options. And I always say what your priority is, and some of you who have already been on a webinar with me know I say this, whatever is your priority is going to decide which loan you go with. If you're really, you really want a fixed interest rate, a lot of people kind of gravitate towards the Plus. If it's important to you that the student is the borrower, of course, they would need a credit-worthy co-signer, because students just haven't built enough credit on their own. Then sometimes that's where a family will gravitate to. So to me, it's a very personal decision that you make based on, what's important to you. If a parent is denied the Plus loan, there is an option for a student to receive some additional funds. And we're going to talk about that in the next slide. So a little more about the Parent Plus loan. If you do apply, make sure you're applying for the Parent Plus loan, because there's also a Graduate Plus loan, and that's for graduate students can borrow that loan on their own behalf. So we want to make sure that it's that. Parents have to fill out the same documents. They have to do a master promissory note for the loan too. Just a reminder, Parent Plus loan is borrowed by the parent, so it will show on the parent's credit report. At that time, you can choose the type of repayment when you apply for the loan. There's deferment or immediate repayment. So deferment is what we always hear people say, you don't pay your loans back until 6 months after you graduate or withdraw. So that's the Department of Ed's deferment. You do have the option for immediate repayment if that was something that you chose, and that would begin as soon as the portion of the loan dispersed. So when the fall portion dispersed, it would be payments on that, and then when the spring portion dispersed, it would be on that total amount. As I was mentioning before, a parent can be denied for the Plus loan if they have adverse credit, but then it leaves you with 3 options. It does mean that the student can borrow additional loan monies. The maximum on that is $4,000 or $5,000 for juniors and seniors. A parent can seek an endorser, which is just another term that the Department of Ed uses for a co-signer. That person's really a co-signer in the Plus loan. And you can also appeal to the federal government. And with appealing, if you know that they're showing adverse credit and there's something that's an error and you have documentation of that, they are willing to look at that. So always keep that in the back, keep that in the back of your mind. So here's a screenshot of I'm getting ahead of myself. The page on our website where you'll find our recommended lenders. You can access this right through our website. A lot of the information we're showing to you, Student Financial Services, we make sure we have it on the website because we want you to be able to do research on your own and find that information that you need. So you would find this at une.edu/private loans. And as I shared, we do have a preferred lender list, and this list is lenders that we vetted and we feel are a good choice for students. They offer good customer service. Again, you can choose anybody that you would prefer to work with. Again, this slide appeared in our last webinar, but I think it's for those who weren't in attendance, I'm going to kind of go over it a little bit again. And it's about the private loan application process. So you would choose your loan type after you did your research, of course. And then you would determine which lender was the best one for you. And then you would apply to that lender. And at that point, once you apply for the loan, you would, most of them are on, I should say most of them, or all of them at this point are online application processes at this time. Then once you're approved for the loan, they will notify us that, well, you'll get a credit decision and get approved, of course. And then at that point, they will send that information to UNE. So they'll let us know that you applied and that you have a loan that is approved and that the amount in the period that what the loan is for. And then what we'll do is we'll get that loan processed and on your account. And that's typically done once a loan is in the approved process. And then as I shared, we don't receive any money until after add drop, which as of course is once we know that a student is coming and that they're attending. So that's typically 2 weeks after August 31st. So it's usually sometime in September. And then at that point, once we get through add drop, the loan will be dispersed. So as we get to the end of our presentation, there's just a few things that you'll want to do before the fall semester begins. One of the most common questions we get is, why is there a health insurance charge on the bill? As we shared, as a reminder, the health waiver is going to open July 1st. We recommend as soon as it opens that you're students are getting in there and they're waiving that insurance if they already have insurance, because that cost is a little under $3,000. So, you know, that's a substantial charge, especially if you already have insurance in place. Want to make sure students sign up for orientation. That is a really, really important time to be on campus. You'll finalize your schedule. You'll be able to, if your aid is not in place, take care of any of that. You'll get to spend some time with your peers and really get acclimated to campus. Just remember though, I'm going back to the health insurance, that the site doesn't open until July 1st. You want to make sure that if you're going to be on campus, that you complete your housing contract. You also want to make sure that you send your health information. And we all know how important that is now, because we want to make sure that everybody on campus is happy and healthy. And then car on campus or not. You'll have to decide on whether you're going to be bringing your car to campus or if you're going to be leaving it at home. So that again is a decision that a family will have to make. So just a little bit, want to go over our upcoming webinars. And again, I just first want to stop and thank everybody for attending tonight and in taking the time out of their evening. I know everyone is busy these days, and we really hope that this information was really helpful to you and it's helping you navigate the process. So we do have some upcoming webinars. So on June 16th, we're going to be doing Understanding the UNE Bill. So we did go over some billing information today, but within that webinar, we will actually be having our bursar complete with you on the webinar, and she will be going over our billing process in detail. So that's really important. And then July 13th, we have home stretch to the semester startup. So that again is, we're going to go over, we typically go over some of the same information, but we want to make sure that we're reinforcing it. So it's kind of the deadlines that need to be met and any other things at that time of year that need to be completed. So we would love for you to join us at that time too. You can always reach out to us. Here's our contact information. Our information can also be found on our website. We are, I think I shared at the beginning, we're a service-oriented group. We love to work with students. Feel free to reach out to us for anything that you need. Here are our hours for our appointments, 9 a.m. to 3:30. But we also want to also let you know that we are offering limited evening appointments on Wednesdays. So what you can do is you can reach out to our office, and that's going to be between 5 and 7. So you can reach out to our office and you can make an appointment if you need to, if you need that time. So now that we're at the end of our of the webinar, I'm gonna look over to my friend, Bill Rosario. And if Bill, you could go over any questions that we receive so that we can answer people's questions.
Sure. Yeah, let me I'll scroll back up to the top of the list. And for now, to give
Yep,
your voice a
Bill,
little
I
rest.
apologize. I can't hear you.
Oh, all right. Any better now?
A little better.
Okay. So I'll start going through those questions. Um, and I can start with answering those. We'll give your voice a little rest, assuming my audio works okay. And then we can go from there. If there's anything I missed, certainly feel free to jump in. The first question we had was about the Title IV authorization, which is one of the requirements that students need to complete through U Online. To give a little bit of an idea of what that Title IV authorization is essentially if a student would like to allow for their Title IV financial aid, which would be any federal financial aid they're receiving, whether it be federal loans, federal grants, the Parent Plus loan also being a federal loan, whether or not they would like to approve for those loans or for those payments to be able to be applied towards non-educational expenses. So if a family approves that, then if they have a Parent Plus loan and they have some, maybe they're using the UNE health insurance and they want the Parent Plus loan to also cover that health insurance premium, they could do that. Some other examples of non-educational costs might be parking citations, finance charges on past due balances, things like that. If the family were to decline rather than accept, then in that instance, federal aid would not be able to be used towards those non-educational expenses. So that's what you're answering when you complete that requirement through the U Online account. And then another question that came up, which I know Corinne did address, would be those federal requirements when a student is using those federal loans, the subsidized or unsubsidized direct loan. The two requirements that need to be completed are the master promissory note and the entrance counseling. Just to clarify, I think Corinne may have mentioned this, it is the student that needs to be completing those. So the student you will want to be logged into the student's FAFSA account when they complete those requirements. And as Corinne mentioned, and this is a question that came up as well, that there is a gap from the time that you complete those requirements to the time that we will receive notification from the FAFSA website that those are complete. What really gives you an indication that you should be all set is if you've gotten a confirmation email from the studentaid.gov website indicating that you have completed the entrance counseling or indicating that you have completed the master promissory note. If you got one of those confirmation emails, then you should be all set. It's just a matter of time for that information to be transmitted to our system, and then that would be updated and reflected on the student's incomplete requirements. Had a question about the federal work study forms and when those are due. For those forms, the student needs to complete those before they start working in a federal work study position. So ultimately, that's kind of your final guideline. Until the student completes those, they cannot begin working. One note for that, those forms, the I-9 form does require that we see the student's original copy of whatever IDs they're using to complete that form, whether that be their passport, which covers all the requirements, or if not, they would need to show a photo ID such as a driver's license or a state ID. And then they would also need to show a copy of their birth certificate or their social security card. And those need to be the original copies, not a photocopy. I would certainly encourage, if families know a student is using work study, the orientation is a good time to complete that paperwork because you can bring those original copies and then bring them back home with you, as opposed to the student having to bring those to campus at the start of the school year and then kind of hold on to them until the next time that they go back home. So you just don't have that risk of losing that identification when the student has it there during that fall semester. Let's see here. Had a question about meal plans and when they pay for those meal plans. The meal plan is included in the room and board charge. So when those bills go out in June, the room and board would be included there, and that meal plan is built into that room and board charge. So a portion of that charge is for the meal plan. Students do have, if students want to make adjustments to their meal plan as far as the type of plan, the meal breakdown, that would be something they work with the dining office to make any adjustments to that. Did have a question about the FERPA and where to locate that. That will appear in the student's incomplete requirements on their U Online account. That incomplete requirement, the FERPA, it is a link. So if you click on the FERPA in that incomplete requirement, it will take you to the online form you can complete. And then that will be processed. Similar to some of the other items, it is something that has to manually be entered. So if you complete that, if the student completes that form, it's not going to instantly show as complete. It's only going to show as complete once someone from our office has entered that information and has then manually marked that FERPA requirement as complete. So if you just kind of keep that in mind, that there will be a turnaround time for that, it won't instantaneously reflect as complete. And then had a couple questions regarding payment plans and making payments through TouchNet. The earliest that you can make a payment through TouchNet would be when that bill is generated in June for the fall semester. So before that, you're not able to make payments until the bill is actually generated. On a similar note, for the payment plans, you can't sign up for one of those plans until the bill is generated. As Corinne talked about a little bit with that, the total number of payments in the payment plan is going to be reflected by when you sign up for the payment plan. The final month of the payment plan is always going to be the same each semester. So for the fall, November is always the final month of the plan. And for the spring, April is always the final month of the plan. And so depending on when you sign up, that will determine how many payments are in that plan. If you were to put the plan in place around the due date each semester, that will leave you with 4 payments for the fall and 4 payments for the spring. There was also a question about any customization with those plans or how those plans work. And the plan will take that balance that is owed after any aid or anything else has been applied towards the student's account. If you already have loans and those have been applied, it will take that remaining balance and it will break it up amongst the remaining months in the payment plan. It is broken up equally, so it's not something where you can front load it or back load it. It's going to take that total number and split it equally amongst those remaining months in the plan. Then the one other question that came up would be for families that have a change in circumstance relating to their FAFSAs. The FAFSA is looking at 2020 tax and income information for the family. So certainly there are instances where in 2021 or 2022, there may have been a change in the income. And so if that is a situation that comes up, that would be something we would encourage the family to reach out to our office directly. They can give us some details about that change, and then someone can review that to see if it's a situation where it may be worth getting some documentation and seeing if that FAFSA can be updated to use that new information that has since come through, after the 2020 information had been submitted. Just taking a look to see if any new questions have come in. We do have a question about making payments from a 529 plan. And so for 529 plans, those you would want to work directly with the financial company that plan is through as far as making payments. Some companies will send the payment via a check that will go out in the mail. Other companies prefer to send those payments via a wire transfer. Once you've worked with your company to see what that process is, if needed, we can certainly provide any information you need for the mailing address, or if it is a case that they prefer to make those payments via a wire transfer, we can give you the wire instructions for that. One thing to keep in mind with that, particularly when you start to take into account the due dates for the bill, it does take some time to process those payments, whether it is a wire transfer or a mailed payment. There is, somewhere in the range of about 10 business days that typically is needed for those to be processed. So you would want to try and keep that in mind. When you're making that payment, you'd try and have that in place, far enough ahead of the due date that you wouldn't run into any issues with that. And then the last question I have here is how a student gets approved for work study. Federal work study is an item that's included in financial aid. There is a need-based element with that, in that a student has to have some level of unmet need to be eligible to potentially receive work study funds. It would have, if students had received it initially, it would have been included in their financial aid award. If a student did not receive federal work study funds and they would like to see if they could potentially appeal to have those added, the family and the student can reach out to our office, and we can determine if there is any unmet need. We can then enter in a work study appeal on the student's behalf. And then those do get reviewed as we get further along in the semester in the process. One other note for that, even if a student does not have federal work study included in their financial aid, there are non-federal work study positions available for students as well. So if a student is interested in working on campus, there are opportunities, whether those are via work study or via other non-work study positions that are available on campus. And that appears to be all the questions I see here in the chat.
Excellent. Again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Again, I want to just quickly remind you, we do have 2 other webinars coming up. We would love for you to join us on those, and we hope you have a good evening.